Arirang Special.
On June 29th in 2017, South Korean President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump met in person for the first time. The next day, the two leaders held a joint news conference to declare the solid alliance between the two nations. That moment announced a new phase of the 64-year-old South Korea-U.S. alliance. President Moon began his short trip to the U.S. by visiting a memorial dedicated to the Changjin Lake campaign. More commonly known as the Battle of Choshin Reservoir, this battle was one of the fiercest conflicts during the Korean War. This itinerary is, in fact, related to the president's personal history.
And in order to make room for as many people as possible.
장진호의 용사들이 없었다면, 그리고 흥남철수작전의 성공이 없었다면 제 삶은 시작되지 못했을 것이고 오늘의 저도 없었을 것입니다.
When North Korea invaded South Korea on June 25, 1950, the United Nations came to the aid of the South and sent troops from 16 countries, with the United States as the principal force. During the war, the Allied soldiers managed to evacuate some 90,000 civilians from North Korea to the south, against an overwhelmingly larger number of Chinese soldiers via Port Hungnam. Among them were President Moon's parents.
And my husband took the picture. So maybe your father and mother in levels below.
Like sardines.
President Moon offered a sincere emotional tribute to soldiers at the National Museum of the Marine Corps.
원조 장군님 덕분에 흥남철수가 있었고 덕분에 또 제가.
Diplomatically, I think it's very important. Mr. Boone has a unique background, and no one can match it. And it has an emotional background. He was a product of Korean War, a tragedy. And we're all proud of that, which he's going to exercise fully.
By his speech, he emphasized and focused on the importance of the U.S.-South Korea alliance, which has been, bred by the ironclad and bloodshed, battle-based relationship and alliance. We fought together, and the United States were the country that made those South Korean people escape from North Korea to South Korean territory. So I think focusing on that, he made this U.S.-South Korea summit meeting very much, stirred up. I think we have, upgraded the alliance and perceptions about the alliance into something more important level, I think.
Then in October 1953, 2 months after the end of the Korean War, the Republic of Korea-U.S. Mutual Defense Agreement was signed to guarantee South Korea's national security. It later became the foundation of the ROK-U.S. alliance.
Americans have positive view of the alliance that's been forged in blood since the aftermath of the Korean War. American soldiers and South Korean soldiers fought side by side for freedom of South Korea. And of course, American policymakers understand that South Korea is one of the closest allies for Washington in the world, and of course, in the region along with Japan.
President Moon stressed that the ROK-U.S. alliance will become stronger as it was bound by blood.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Then he had his first meeting with President Trump, with the U.S. president extending a warm welcome. Since the initial ROK-U.S. alliance was established during the Cold War era, the alliance has changed and evolved during peacetime. Changes have been greatly influenced over the years by summits between the country's leaders. Back in May of 2003, President Roh Moo-hyun and President George W. Bush launched the Strategic Consultation for Allied Partnership. Then President Lee Myung-bak and President Bush agreed to upgrade the ROK-U.S. alliance into a 21st century strategic alliance in April of 2008. Then in 2013, the two countries presented the joint declaration in celebration of 60 years of the countries' bilateral partnership and shared prosperity. Now, in 2017, President Moon and President Trump declared an unchanging, strong alliance and trust between South Korea and the United States.
More than 6 decades after our partnership was forged in the fires of war, the alliance between the United States and South Korea is a cornerstone of peace and security in a very, very dangerous part of the world. The link between our countries, cemented in battle, is now also tied together by culture, commerce, and common values.
이번 방미를 통해 트럼프 대통령과 저 사이에는 깊은 신뢰와 우위가 형성되었습니다. 이는 우리 앞에 놓여 있는 많은 과제들을 해결해 나가는 데 있어서 든든한 기반이 될 것이라고 확신합니다. 먼저 트럼프 대통령과 저는 강력한 안보만이 진정한 평화를 가능하게 한다는 것에 동의했습니다.
Although North and South Korea no longer fight, the war is still going on today, with increased threats from the North, making the ROK-U.S. alliance all the more important. Last April, the Trump administration took a hardline stance against North Korea's continual military provocations.
Well, I think the North Korean nuclear missile development is proceeding, and it's now becoming not only Korean Peninsula problem, but also regional and global problem. In order to deal with it, I don't think there would be any way but to cooperate with the United States. So I think in that sense, to deal with North Korea, U.S.-South Korea alliance and cooperation is a very important tool.
The North Korea issue was one of the greatest concerns ahead of the Seoul-Washington summit. Both South Korea and the United States agreed to firmly respond against North Korea's threats and provocations, saying that they consider it the most serious challenge that the two countries face today. Also, President Moon sent a stern warning message to North Korea.
우리 두 정상은 제재와 대화를 활용한 단계적이고 포괄적인 접근을 바탕으로 북핵 문제를 근원적으로 해결해 나가자는 데 뜻을 같이 했습니다.
The United States calls on other regional powers and all responsible nations to join us in implementing sanctions and demanding that the North Korean regime choose a better path.
President Trump called for maximum pressure on North Korea through sanctions. However, President Moon argued that Seoul and Washington must offer concessions to Pyongyang if it complies with demands for a nuclear freeze as a gateway to dialogue and to eventual dismantlement of its nuclear program.
북한의 도발에는 단호하고 강력하게 대응해야 합니다. 동시에 김정은 위원장과 대화하는 것도 필요합니다. 그가 북한에서 핵 폐기를 결정할 수 있는 유일한 인물이기 때문입니다. 대화의 목표는 분명합니다. 북한이 스스로 핵 폐기를 결정하는 것입니다.
Therefore, the two leaders have agreed to establish high-level strategic consultation mechanisms in various fields towards a fundamental resolution of the North Korea nuclear issue.
Principle: sanctions and pressure are necessary, means, but not the end and goal itself. At the end of the day, South Korea and the United States agreed to resolve this issue through peaceful manner, dialogue and negotiations. This is one very important principle.
North Korea's threat has been increasing and particularly worrisome in the past few years because of their missile and nuclear capability have been increasing. But I think in the recent months, because of the American student's unfortunate death, the North Koreans have sent him home in a coma, and his subsequent death have really had a visceral effect for the American public and the policymakers for the Trump administration. I think this is why both Mr. Trump and Mr. Moon have addressed humanitarian concerns, human rights issues in North Korea, along with the nuclear and missile issues.
The greatest achievement of this summit must be the fact that the South Korean government has taken the initiative on South-North dialogue. President Trump encouraged the Moon Jae-in administration to pursue a policy of engagement and dialogue with the North, to actively pursue establishment of a permanent peace agreement on the Korean Peninsula.
Strategic patience has not worked. Trump said it, and Trump's methodology of using China to resolve this North Korean issue has not worked either. So what's next? Now Moon Jae-in comes in, say, okay, let me take over from here. I have an idea. So Trump said, okay, you do the role, you take the lead. So this is what I think is the bigger picture of how South Korea and the United States approach this issue. And now it is playing the main role, and which is acknowledged as actually by taken for granted. So actually, I think U.S. and other players, they support this approach.
Experts predict that this agreement is likely to become more than a mere proclamation of an agreement.
So I think there is no question of America's commitment to come to South Korea's aid should South Korea be attacked by North Korea. But I'm concerned that going forward, there are a number of challenges to the alliance that the joint statement didn't quite fully address. So I'm concerned that there might be a divergent in approach, in North Korea's approach.
The two countries were in general agreement towards the development of the ROK-U.S. alliance and the resolution of the North Korea nuclear issue. However, some issues remain unresolved, such as economic cooperation. President Trump brought up the trade deficit between South Korea and the United States.
Thank you very much, President. We're also working to create a fair and reciprocal economic relationship. From when the U.S.-Korea trade deal was signed in 2011 to 2016, you know who signed it, you know who wanted it. Our trade deficit with South Korea has increased by more than $11 billion.
In response, President Moon claimed that the Korea-U.S. FTA is well balanced and they should investigate the problems involved. The Korea-U.S. FTA entered into force on March 15, 2012, 5 years and 9 months after the two countries announced their intent to negotiate a free trade agreement in 2006. Despite concerns over the deal, the agreement resulted in a notably positive impact on both countries' economies over the last 5 years, contrary to what President Trump claims. The increase in trade between the two countries, an average of 1.7% per year, despite the global economic slowdown, speaks for itself. The market share of Korean goods in the U.S. import market rose to 3.2% from 2.6%, reaching its peak in 15 years, while the U.S. share of Korea's imports rose to 10.6% from pre-Korea-U.S. FTA levels of 8.5%.
If you just look at the trade, may be imbalanced, but looking at other areas like investment or interchange of research facilities and income repatriation, the U.S. is benefiting very much. So And it's not just a one-sided game between Korea and the United States.
President Trump has been emphasizing his America First approach and protectionist policies since his presidential campaign. Upon his inauguration, the U.S. president decided not to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, and is now calling for renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, railing against international trade deals.
Together an all-star team.
So how can the two countries engage in mutually beneficial economic cooperation?
Understanding trade deficit on the one hand, try to find another way of cooperation on the part of Korea by investing more people, investing more money into the States, and have mutual structure of R&D investment, and also interchange of personnel and educational opportunities.
Ironically enough, the solution remains an economic and social exchange between the two countries. On his first visit to Washington, D.C., President Moon was joined by a 52% Korean business delegation, comprised of CEOs and business leaders from Korea's top conglomerates. Prior to the summit, the Korean president introduced the Korean government's new economic policies to the American political and economic leaders in order to attract more investment for the South Korean economy. Also, he called for efforts to upgrade the economic ties between the two nations so they become strategic economic partners to pioneer new global markets.
미국의 사업 개발, 한국의 브랜드 건설 경험과 미국의 사업 개발, 엔지니어링 기술이 개발하면 해외 발전소 건설 운영에도 동반 진출의 기회가 생길 것입니다. 양국 기업의 글로벌 시장에 대한 전략적 동반 진출은 양국 경제 발전의 새로운 돌파구가 될 것입니다.
Ahead of President Moon's White House visit, Samsung Electronics announced plans to open a $380 million home appliance manufacturing factory in South Carolina, expected to generate nearly 1,000 jobs by 2020.
가전 생산 기지 확보를 통해서 글로벌 가전 시장 트렌드를 선도하는 미국 시장에서 삼성의 제품 판매를 확대할 계획으로 있습니다.
The 52% Korean business delegation also announced a plan to invest a combined $12.8 billion in the United States over the next 5 years.
Tremendous investment involved, which will generate thousands of employment. That's a pretty good gesture, in my opinion. Such a small country like Korea doing such exceptional investment to USA. So a lot of other countries there, but especially USA, they selected building more and more USA, which, in my opinion, is a good gesture. As Korea economy rises, more investment, so it mutually benefited. It's not a one-way deal, I don't see it. So anybody has a mistaken conception that USA is helping Korea as one way, that's not so. It's always mutual. And this good feeling, good friendship will last a long time.
The only way to get over the problem with the trade deficit is by Korea having more investment in the States. That's exactly what the corporations have promised this meeting. So we may sell more products to the States, but also with the money, Korea is willing to invest a lot more money in the States. By doing so, Korea will have economic growth in the States, more jobs in the States, and more economic cooperations between two countries. So one side, there's a trade deficit, but on the other side, investment from Korea to the States. So that, I think, is the bilateral cooperation between the two countries. I think that is very desirable direction between two countries in the future.
Despite the huge investment from South Korea, It is predicted that the United States will continue to raise issues related to the trade deficit between the two nations. Therefore, the Korean government will have to thoroughly investigate those problems to emphasize how the U.S. benefits from this agreement, while preparing for the potential renegotiation of a new version of the agreement.
I think President Moon Jae-in responded well. Matter-of-factly, he said it was outside the joint statement, period. Joint statement is the only official document worked by and agreed by the two governments and two leaders. Anything spoken outside the joint statement is a personal view, but not agreed by the both sides. However, I think the Korea-U.S. FTA has been signed 5 years ago. There are some areas of improvement something that we could work on based on each other's good communication. Based on my communication with some of these experts, they said they used terminology called upgrade of the existing FTA deal. I think this is something that we could work on each other, so no problem.
South Korea and the United States have maintained a strong alliance for more than 6 decades, and the Korean people hope this positive relationship continues for a long time. Also, the majority of Korean citizens are optimistic about the future of the ROK-U.S. alliance with the Moon Jae-in administration. During the summit, the two leaders highlighted the importance of the Korea-U.S. alliance to achieve freedom, democracy, peace, and prosperity. Also, they agreed to resolve the North Korea nuclear issue together and establish more mutually beneficial economic relations to prevent future issues. The greatest expectation of the Korean public for this summit is that it will help rebuild mutual trust and friendship with the United States.
Building up friendship and a very close tie and bilateral trust between President Trump and President Moon, I think it's the single most important achievement in this summit meeting.
The whole meeting started from the alliance and end with the alliance. So from South Korea's perspective, if you look back on this summit 10 years from now, 100 years from now, probably if it works out very well, South Korea taking the driver's seat leading role for the first time in a long period of time, probably this will be remembered as a very important chapter in Korean Peninsula's history.
This really signals the beginning of the Moon-Trump era in bilateral relations. And the summit really set the tone for the rest of the alliance for both of their terms, I think there will be potential challenges down the road when it comes to dealing with North Korea. While they agree broadly that both sanctions and dialogue should be needed, there is going to be different emphasis. Washington is going to press on sanctions and pressure more, and perhaps President Moon is going to try to find a way to have a dialogue with North Korea. Either way, I do think very close coordination is absolutely needed. Close coordination and communication between the two allies.
The first Seoul-Washington summit concluded successfully, but it's only a first step. South Korea and the U.S. have to protect the world from North Korea and its repeated violations by improving relations through mutually beneficial exchange, as in the past 64 years. Both President Moon and President Trump started their respective terms in office this year. Through this summit, the two leaders marked a new phase of the ROK-U.S. alliance. The whole world is anticipating what the partnership holds for the future of the two countries.